Hello, Summer Academy Econ students. This is Mr. Stark. For this PowerPoint, this PowerPoint's going to cover the day 1 and day 2 activities. You'll have other introductory activities to do as well, but this PowerPoint gives you not just some additional concepts, but also my explanation of them through my voiceover, obviously. This is also a similar PowerPoint to what I use in actual Summer Academy. It's just been pared down since we're doing it online, and since you also have other resources you'll be doing today about economic decision making. So let's go ahead and get started. So you learned that economics is basically the choices people make because of what's called scarcity. Scarcity is simply there's not enough resources to have for everyone to get what they want. So people have to make choices. So every time you make choices in a day, you're doing economics. That can have to do with there's not enough diamonds, as you see from the ring there. There's not enough money, not enough water. There's not even enough time. Years ago, one of the Ivy League schools, it might have been Harvard or Yale, did a study where they asked Americans, what are some of the average things that you want to do in your day? What are some of the activities you would like to do every day? And people, said things like, get 8 hours of sleep, spend time with family, spending time with friends, getting exercise, having some quiet time, reflective time, things like that. And then they averaged the amount of time it would take to do each one of those. And the conclusion was the average American needs something like 30 plus hours in a day to do all that they want, which shows you that there's even a scarcity of time. And this idea of scarcity affects what's called output, which is the amount of goods and services that can be produced. You've heard that term goods and services probably. Goods are basically the things that you can purchase, touch, feel, food, clothes, things like that, whereas services are things you pay for that people do for you, like plumbing, electrician, things like that, fixing your computer. Now, a couple things need to be distinguished. Scarcity is different from shortage. Scarcity is permanent. There will always be an insufficient supply of things like gold, copper, jewelry. It's always limited. Shortages are temporary lacks of goods and services. For example, there is a temporary shortage of toilet paper as soon as this COVID outbreak came on in March in the United States, once it really started to scare people. Or there was a shortage, there still is a shortage of like Clorox wipes or Lysol spray, things like that. Now, it stinks right now, but eventually more will be manufactured or people will start calming down, and so there will no longer be a lack of it. So that is a temporary shortage. So scarcity is permanent, shortage is temporary. So here's some questions for you to think about. Something else that's scarce, goods and services there have been a shortage of, and then obviously an Xbox is a good, teeth cleaning is a service, manicure is a service, and tablets are goods. Okay, so economics studies how people choose to use scarce resources to satisfy their wants. So it's a study of choice. This happens at your personal level. So when you're the kid in the candy store and your parents tell you just one, what do you choose? Do you save your money in a piggy bank or spend it on things? Or do you spend money or save it up for college? Businesses make these decisions every day. If they make a profit, do they expand? Do they pay their employees more? Do they pay their executives more? All sorts of business decisions. And then at a country level, countries make decisions, some better than others. You might be able to recognize this country, but the pictures here of North Korea, they spend over a quarter of their worth on the military, which means most of the programs that would provide for people who are starving aren't there. And so something like half of North Koreans are in a state of malnutrition. North and South Koreans are genetically the same, yet North Koreans are usually 4 to 5 ounces lighter when they're born because of malnourishment of the mothers. North Koreans are usually 2 to 3 inches shorter than South Koreans, again because of malnutrition. And so governments make choices, some better than others, on what to do with their money, with their resources. These are a couple terms that you're going to come across again in some of the activities. Microeconomics is the study of particulars, the economy at the smaller level, so individuals, individual businesses, individual countries, individual products. Macroeconomics is the study of the big picture. The macro is the big picture. So entire regions of the world as a whole. Things like unemployment percent, which is over 15% currently because of the COVID shutdown. Inflation, which is the rise of prices over time. Poverty, another thing that's covered in macroeconomics. So micro versus macroeconomics, which you will learn both of those in this course. Here's just a little bit of a breakdown as to some of the things we're going to talk about, whether they're micro or macro. We'll start with micro, and then we'll get into macro in the last week of this course. All right, so challenge questions. Some of these you'll be doing as an assignment. Some of these we'll do together on this PowerPoint, but we'll do these two together. If you're analyzing the average national income of Americans, are you studying micro or macro? Well, it's looking at the whole picture, a big picture, the broad picture. That would be macroeconomics. The next one, if you're studying why Walmart continued the sale of a particular type of cookware, well, that's one store and one product. That's a smaller picture. That would be microeconomics. Okay, so what causes people to choose one thing or the other? Dinner or a movie? Whether you buy a lollipop or some dots for candy. Well, you have three things that go into it. One of them is positive incentives. Incentives are the reasons why you do things. Another word for this is rewards. So why do you clean your room? Maybe it's because you know you can get to go to a movie. Maybe you open a savings account because you know the money's there safe in the bank and you earn a little bit of interest. Not much, as we'll see later, but a little bit. On the other hand, negative incentives, also called costs or penalties. You've heard of the carrot and stick method. The carrot is like the positive motivation. The stick is like the negative motivation. Don't do your homework, bad grades. You miss work, you lose your job. Now, if you think carefully on why you do the things you do, you'll probably conclude that humans have a mixture. There is really no 100% positive incentives. For example, you do your homework probably because you want to get an A, but also partially because you don't want to get, an NG, which at Heron, for those of you who aren't Heron students, that's what they call an F, a failing grade. And then the question utility is also important, which is how useful is this to me? If I have braces, which makes your teeth very loose and it's hard to chew things, probably not a lot of utility in chewing gum or taffy if you're having to choose candy. On the other hand, softer candy have a lot of utility in that. So again, utility is ultimately what led you to the decision. What usefulness did your decision have for you? So people are usually trying to make the best decision, or also what's called economizing with the money they have. Rarely do people try to look for the most expensive, least well-made or cheapest product. Usually if they're looking for, cheaply made. Usually they're trying to economize, get the best product for the lowest amount of money. So now we come to the two big terms you're going to do an assignment on here in a minute. This is trade-off and opportunity cost. As you know, you can't always get what you want. If you make a choice, that means you're choosing not to get something else. So that's what these terms are dealing with. So a trade-off is basically the alternative, the thing that you are giving up when you choose something. So we're going to use the typical example, dinner and a movie. Choice A, you go to the movies. Choice B, you go to dinner. Well, if you decide to go to the movies, you give up going to dinner. Of course, this is assuming you can't do both. You only have enough money or time for one of them. So if you go to the movies, your trade-off is simply going to dinner. You don't go to dinner. If you choose to go to dinner, your trade-off is simply going to the movies. You don't go to the movies. Again, the trade-off is what you give up. Now, opportunity cost is important because it's a little bit different than trade-off. It is asking you what is the value of what you're giving up. So what is it worth to you? So for example, if you decide to go to dinner, Well, the trade-off is going to the movie. Opportunity cost is asking, well, what is that movie worth to you? Maybe you give up seeing your favorite actor or actress. Maybe you give up seeing the previews. Maybe you give up, just the experience of being in a comfortable reclining theater with IMAX surround sound. That's what it was worth to you. On the other hand, if you choose to go to the movies, the trade-off is going to dinner. Well, what's that dinner worth to you? Maybe you don't get to eat your favorite food or enjoy the ambiance of your favorite restaurant, or maybe one of your friends is a waiter or waitress there and get to see them and talk to them. That's what you're giving up. That's what eating out was worth to you. Now, most commonly, this deals with money amounts. So, for example, if going to dinner cost you $10 and going to the movies cost you $15, well, if you chose the more expensive, going to the movies, that's $15. Well, that decision cost you $5 extra. Remember, dinner was $10, movie was $15. You chose the more expensive option. So if the opportunity cost is the $5 extra you spent because you're going to the movies. So quick example here with Frank, and then you're going to do an example of yourself. Frank's faced with a decision. He can buy a $60 textbook or a new video game for $50. He really wants the video game, but he needs the textbook to study. So what does Frank do? Assuming the option is he buys the textbook. Well, the trade-off, what did he not do? He didn't buy the video game. Now, what is the opportunity cost? It could be a couple things. One could be he doesn't get to have fun with the video game. But usually what I'll be asking you is how much extra money did his decision cost him? In this case, it's $10. He spent $10 extra than he would have spent anyway to buy the new textbook. And then the utility, you really can't see that because it's cut off. But the utility is basically, why did he choose the textbook? It's because he needed to study. So now you are going to do one about David, which we will discuss next time we meet, probably this afternoon, and see what you got on it. So remember, trade-off is simply what you choose not to do. Opportunity cost is how much that decision cost you. In this case, how much more money did you pay because of the decision? All right. So now we're going to talk about what's called the factors of production. These are basically fancy words for what's called input. These are the things that basically are used to make products. So if we make a car at a Chrysler, auto plant, what are the different things that are used to make a car that is then sold as output? So again, input are the things that are needed to make something. So the first one is land. Land is all the naturally occurring substances on or under the ground. So fruit, vegetables, minerals like iron, copper, gold, silver, water. Those are all things that are considered land, naturally occurring on or under. So for example, making cars, probably iron. Iron's mined from the ground, it's used to make cars. Copper for the wiring is also mined from the ground also. Next one's labor. Basically the humans that are needed to work to make it. So this could be picking apples, or it could be at a Chrysler auto plant on the assembly line drilling in axles or fitting windshield wipers. That is human work. Capital, a couple different types, but most of the capital we're thinking about are the tools and machines and buildings. So like for using our auto plant example, capital would be like the building, the huge factory that's used to make the product, the different machines that are increasingly being used to make cars, so the computers, the different machines that are automated, and then the tools that are used to make cars as well. And then entrepreneurship, these are basically the people who take the risks in making them. So business owners, people who invest in businesses. If you watch Shark Tank, which we would do if we were in the class, we'd watch some Shark Tank. It's basically entrepreneurs who have a small business or are starting a business, and they're risking their money to start a business. Now, they are also asking the sharks, who are sharks, who are very rich people, people with billions of dollars to spend or hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on businesses. And they try to convince them that their business is a winner and to invest money. And it basically means the sharks would become a part owner of the company and they would get a certain percent of the profit if the company is successful. But if the company is not successful, they also lose their money that they invested as well. And we might still do something with Shark Tank if I can think of something to do with it, because it's one of my favorite shows on economics, as many of you know. See, that's something we would have done. So that is it for day one. You will do the activities, the review, and then you will do the Unit 1 quiz after you have gone over the PowerPoint, gone over the readings and stuff. And tomorrow we'll talk about the different types of economic systems. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the different types of economic systems, which primarily are market economy, command economies, and mixed economies. You are going to do a short reading that kind of outlines mostly about market economies and command economies. You're going to answer a few questions about it. And then we're gonna kind of fit some words that are underneath it. Another economy is a traditional economy, which we'll talk a little bit about, but mostly it's market economies and command economies. Although in reality in the world we live in, every economy is a mix of those two. So we'll go over these answers together probably when we meet. Make sure you have the different terms correct, and also once you have done the readings. And you'll do this car manufacturing questions as an assignment to see just how well you understand the different types of economic systems.